this Winter Wellbeing presentation looking at the importance of physical activity. My name's Laura Stewart and I'm the course leader for the Applied Sport and Exercise Science course at Robert Gordon University. I'm going to talk through physical activity and physical inactivity and the benefits associated with physical activity as well as the risks associated with physical inactivity. And then I'm going to look at providing some information on how to increase physical activity, hopefully from highlighting the benefits of it, that will help people to understand why, and then also give people ideas on how to do that. So physical activity has been well proven through research, through evidence, to be associated with a number of benefits. These are physical benefits, psychological benefits, and social benefits. So I've listed some of these here so that we can identify some of the key benefits associated with physical activity. And also, I guess this is the Winter Wellbeing series of presentations, so it's important to think about these specifically in a winter context potentially as well. So initially, the benefits of physical activity have been proven to be linked with improved cardiovascular function as well as improved respiratory function. So that's the function of our heart and the blood vessels within our body as well as the function of our lungs. That then goes on to the next point, which is reduced cardiovascular disease risk factors. So there are a number of risk factors which place individuals at risk of developing cardiovascular disease, which can lead to angina, heart attack, stroke, and physical activity has been proven to be associated with reducing those risk factors. Because of the impact that physical activity has on our cardiovascular and respiratory function, it's closely associated with decreased morbidity and mortality. So that's three very key physical benefits of physical activity. If we think about our mental health, which can be particularly challenging during the winter months as well, especially when it's cold, wet, the days are short, it's dark, seasonal affective disorder, these sorts of things start to influence our mental health during the winter months. So the fact that physical activity has been proven to be associated with decreased anxiety and depression can be really beneficial to us during the winter months. It's also been linked to improved cognitive function, as well as enhancing overall feelings of well-being for individuals. And again, that can be really key to us during the winter months. So as well as the physical and the sort of psychological and mental health aspects of physical activity, it's also been demonstrated to enhance our performance elsewhere in our lives, for example, in our work, in our recreation, in our sport, in our social interactions, and physical activities linked to positive enhancements in those areas. So that being said, they're the benefits associated with physical activity. What often gets discussed with physical activity is physical inactivity. Now, we live in a world where physical inactivity has become more and more prevalent because we have created technology and life efficiencies that require us to move less. In being the super clever race that we are, humans have removed the need for physical activity in many of our daily tasks. But because of that, they've accentuated this cycle of physical inactivity. So as we increase in age, we move less. Our chronological age will predict our levels of physical activity to some degree. An adult is a lot less physically active than a baby or an infant, where they just don't sit still. They're constantly on the go. So we move less and become more physically inactive as we age. As we age, we also experience biological and sort of expected decreases in our physical capacity and function. So our bodies do deteriorate as we age. That's part of the aging process. So we have diminished physical capacity and function, but that is again extenuated by physical inactivity. Diminished physical capacity and function can lead to the development of non-communicable diseases. So they're diseases that cannot be spread from one person to another and are more closely associated with lifestyle behaviours. So they are diseases that are preventable. In the most part, they are associated with lifestyle risk factors. There are some non-modifiable risk factors that increase people's chance of developing those diseases, but these conditions also have modifiable risk factors, and one of the key modifiable risk factors for non-communicable diseases is physical inactivity. Unfortunately, if we develop a non-communicable disease, we tend to experience further physical deterioration as a result of that condition, and that gets worse as we age again because of the biological deterioration of our bodies, and that is the physical inactivity cycle. So physical activity has these potential benefits for us, and physical inactivity can lead to this cycle. So that was I just wanted to highlight the importance of physical inactivity and really clarify why physical inactivity is deemed to be bad for us. So I've used the term physical activity, and we're talking about the importance of physical activity. So often people say, well, what is physical activity? I don't understand what it is. Now, there are very clear definitions for physical activity, whether that's leisure time physical activity, occupational physical activity, whether that's physical inactivity. There's definitions for exercise, for sport, and often these terms are used interchangeably and people don't know what they are. So let's keep it simple. What we are talking about is movement. Quite simply, moving our bodies more. Yes, we're talking about the importance of physical activity, but to make it clear, we're talking about moving our bodies, using our bodies within our physical capabilities and any physical limitations, moving our bodies as we can. Our bodies are designed for moving, the muscles, the joints, the nerve impulses, they are designed to be moved. So let's keep it simple and let's just say that we're talking about moving our bodies, and if we want to increase our physical activity, we're talking about moving more. That's what we're looking at. So that brings me to the next point. So how much more? How much do I need to move? And that's often one of the first questions. How much do I need to move? Evidence suggests that adults need to move approximately 30 minutes a day. But you can do that in blocks of 10 minutes. So you could have 3 blocks of 10 minutes, and that would be adequate to experience some of the benefits associated with physical activity. So those benefits on that slide that I highlighted, if you were moving your body for 30 minutes a day, you would start to experience, for a prolonged period of time, you would start to experience the benefits associated with physical activity. Now, the next question is, well, how hard do I have to work? How intense does the movement have to be? And the evidence suggests it should be at a moderate intensity if it's the 30 minutes a day. So you're looking at something that makes you slightly breathless, but you can still hold a conversation. That's the sort of intensity you're looking for. So when we think about whether that's achievable or not, can we move for 30 minutes a day? Well, let's look at the average adult. The average adult sleeps for approximately 8 hours a night. That's probably a little bit generous, but we'll say approximately 8 hours a night, which means that they have a remaining 16 hours of the day to find 30 minutes to move. And again, it doesn't have to be a 30-minute block. It can be 3 10-minute blocks throughout the other 16 hours of the day. That seems quite doable, actually. Can I find 3 10-minute blocks within a 16-hour day to move my body a little bit more? That's what we're looking for. But in addition to that, we also need to break up the amount of time that we sit for long periods. Now, this is challenging in today's society because we have very cleverly designed a lot of our daily lives to be sat down. We sit in our cars or on a bus or on a train. We sit at a desk or at a computer or, at whatever our job is. If we're studying, we sit in a classroom, we sit in a lecture hall, we meet our friends when we're allowed to. We might sit at a coffee table, we might sit in a restaurant, we might sit on a bench in a park, we go home, we sit and we watch TV to unwind and relax, we sit and play computer games, we sit and talk to our family at the table whilst we have dinner, we sit and have our dinner on our laps. We've designed a life where we sit for long periods of time, and that's something that needs to also be addressed. So as well as that 30 minutes in your 16 hours that you're awake, finding 30 minutes to move, can you also break up the time where you're sat for long periods? Could you add some movement into those periods of time when you're sat down? Okay, so next we need to think about our barriers. So it sounds really simple that if all we have to do is move more and all we have to do it for is 30 minutes of the day and reduce the amount of time that we sit still. That sounds easy. If it were easy, I would not be doing a presentation during the Winter Wellbeing series on the importance of physical activity. And the reason for that is the barriers that people experience. Now, I'm not talking about excuses, and many people say, oh, it's just excuses. It's not excuses. These are very real barriers. They are reasons not to move. They're not things that people have created in their minds that are not real to them, and they vary from individual to individual, but there are very common barriers. The most common is time, and I've hopefully tried to address that a little bit by explaining how much time is actually required. But still, finding that 30 minutes realistically in the day can be challenging when you feel like you do not have enough time to do all the things you already need to do. So time can be a really big barrier. Cost. People assume that in order to meet or achieve these health benefits associated with physical activity, well, I must need to do them in certain clothes or certain shoes with a certain membership in a certain environment or facility. There must be a cost to it. The other form of cost that's associated with these, with increasing physical activity is the cost to self. What do I have to give up in order to fit that movement into my day? So there's the financial cost and then the self cost of it. The weather, the environment. This is particularly challenging during the winter. We have short days, long nights, cold, wet, dangerous conditions at times when it's icy, when it's been snowing, not feeling safe in the environment in order to be more active or move more outside. So the weather can be a real big barrier for people. Competing commitments. What else is required of us? I have all these other things to do and I need to do all these other things for other people. How can I find time to do this for myself? How can I really find those 30 minutes? That's incredibly difficult or selfish when I have all these competing commitments. If the people around you don't support it, if there's a lack of support from your family, your friends, your colleagues, your peers, that's a real barrier to have the people around you not supporting you with your decision to increase your movement. A lack of knowledge. We know that fear comes from lack of knowledge. So not starting something or not doing something because you're afraid of it, because you fear it, because you don't understand it. I don't know how much to do. I don't know if it's safe. I don't know if it's effective. I don't know where to do it or how to do it. That can be a real barrier for people. And at the minute, we have the added barrier of COVID-19, which accentuates all those other barriers that I've just said and adds some of its own complications to trying to improve or increase our movement. What we need to do is to break through those barriers, to find a way through them and a permanent way through them, not to go over them, to go round them, to go under them, but we need to smash through them, because otherwise they will continue to rear up. If we don't find a permanent way to address the barrier, then they will continue to be a barrier at some point. So we need to think about that, and instead of looking at the things that are stopping us, we maybe need to look at the solutions. Don't focus on what you can't do, but focus on what you can do and some of the solutions. So what can you do? Well, movement can be anything. I've tried to make that as simple as possible. We're not talking about physical activity and whether it's specifically defined as physical activity. We're talking about movement. So the most basic form of movement, if physically capable of achieving it, is walking. And we can do that outside, inside. We can use stairs, steps. We can increase our walking. We can walk on the spot. We can increase our walking. We can move more whilst doing chores. I don't know if anyone else has a place in their house where objects collect until the pile gets so big that they all get put away in one go. And I often think to myself, how much physical activity or how much more movement would I accrue if I put those objects away straight away, instead of building one big pile and putting them all away in one go. We're not talking about running a marathon. I'm not talking about a massive amount of movement. I'm talking about just a few extra steps into a different room repeatedly throughout a day. So can we increase the movement required instead of minimising the movement required when we're doing our chores? We could dance. I've not put that in there because I think everyone should start dance classes or try and compete in dance competitions or sign up for Strictly. We can dance. Music is a great motivator for people. How many people have music on in the background during the day? They hear a song that makes them want to move, but they don't move. We stop ourselves. So dancing with friends, with family, by yourself. Moving to music. So I've given 3 examples there, but got to recognise that some people that's too much. It's not possible. We have individual physical capabilities and physical limitations, but that's not to say then that movement's not possible. So we can do chair-based exercises. We can move whilst in our chairs if that's the limitations of your movement. If that's all you feel comfortable doing, we can move our bodies while sat in our chairs. There's a great difference between being very sedentary, sat in a chair, and sitting up straight with good posture and moving whilst we're in a chair. So there are chair-based exercises that can be done. That being said, I've given you some examples of movement, but how do you start then? So how do I get started? So I've thought about what I can do, but how do I start that? The best way to start it is to set a goal, definitely, because it gives you something to work towards. So your goal should be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time framed. That's not to say, okay, I will move more in 2021. Well, that's not very specific. You haven't explained how you're going to move more. You're not comparing it to anything, so it's not really measurable. You haven't said how you're going to know if you've achieved it. Is it realistic? Potentially it's realistic, but there's no real time frame associated to it. So you need to really think about setting yourself a goal. And not berating yourself if that goal isn't met, but thinking about, did you really set an achievable goal in the first place? You need to make it easy. Don't make it complicated. Prepare, link it to something that you are already doing. Don't Don't make it this huge thing that is different to everything else that you're all doing in your current daily routine. Add it into your daily routine to start off with. Value it. If you do not value the movement, you won't do it. If you don't think it's worthwhile, if you don't believe that you're going to gain any benefit from that movement, then you will not see it as beneficial. You won't see it as worthwhile, and you'll just see it as a nuisance or a drain on you. So you need to value it. You need to place some value to that movement. You need to recognize why you're investing in that for your health, to experience the benefits associated with it. You need to value those things, and you need to enjoy it. No one will repeatedly do a behaviour that they do not enjoy. This idea that physical activity or exercise has to be punishing and grueling is not what we're talking about. We're talking about movement. Movement can be enjoyable. Moving to music, walking with a friend, these things can be enjoyable. And that's what we're talking about, trying to move our bodies more with some enjoyment. So what do we do now? Well, my best bit of advice is just start. Don't put it off. Don't think I'll wait for the perfect day, with the perfect pair of shoes, with the perfect plan of what I'm going to do. Just decide to start. It doesn't need to be perfect. Doing something, increasing your movement will move you closer to those benefits of physical activity than if you didn't do anything. So do something. When you're setting out your goals, don't make them so they're unrealistic. And if you don't achieve them, don't write it off. Just start. Because every day that you do more movement than you were doing before, you're getting closer to the benefits of physical activity, to those health benefits, to the physical benefits, the psychological benefits, the social benefits. So just start, just move. Thank you very much for listening.